That badge is fake. Officer Ryan Mercer said it with a short, dismissive laugh, as if the truth had already been decided before Darius Cole finished opening the credential case in his hand. The late afternoon sun stretched across the Westbrook Shopping Center parking lot, turning windshields into bright mirrors while shoppers moved between storefronts with grocery bags, coffee cups, and takeout containers. Less than 20 feet away, Malcolm Price stood with both hands visible, his eyes steady, his posture controlled. Darius did the same. No sudden movement, no raised voice, no attempt to challenge Mercer. The white police officer kept his service weapon lowered but ready as he maintained distance from the two black men and ordered them not to move. Darius held the credential wallet where Mercer could clearly see the photograph, the federal seal, and the words Federal Bureau of Investigation. "You can verify it," Darius said. His voice was quiet, almost calm enough to make the tension around them feel sharper. Mercer glanced at the identification again, then looked back at Darius. "You expect me to believe this?" Malcolm shifted his eyes toward the far side of the parking lot. A silver sedan sat near the western exit, roughly 100 feet away. Beyond it, a dark sport utility vehicle remained parked beneath a row of maple trees with its engine running. Mercer noticed neither. His attention stayed fixed on the credential case. Darius did not argue. "Call dispatch." Mercer gave another short laugh. "You do not tell me how to do my job." Malcolm looked down at his watch. For 32 and 26 seconds. Darius caught the movement from the corner of his eye. Mercer caught it too. "What are you checking?" Mercer asked. Malcolm looked up. "The time." "Why?" Malcolm did not answer. The silence seemed to bother Mercer more than any explanation could have. A woman leaving the nearby coffee shop slowed for half a second when she saw the scene, then continued toward the sidewalk. Darius recognized her immediately. Mercer did not. She never looked directly at either agent. That was intentional. Everything about the afternoon had been intentional until Mercer stepped into it. The location, the silver sedan, the distance between the two federal agents and the vehicle they had been watching, the woman near the coffee shop, the dark sport utility vehicle waiting at the edge of the lot. Darius looked at Malcolm. No words passed between them, but the message was clear. Stay steady. Do not compromise the operation unless there is no other choice. Mercer interpreted the glance differently. "Stop looking at each other," he ordered. Malcolm raised his hands slightly higher. "We are standing still." Mercer turned back to Darius. "Put the badge away." Darius slowly closed the credential wallet but kept it in his hand. "You have my name, my photograph, and my federal identification. Verify it." Mercer stared at him, his expression hardening. He believed the badge was part of the lie. He believed the two men in front of him were trying to outsmart him. What he did not understand was that the badge was real, the surveillance operation around him was real, and the clock Malcolm had just checked was already counting down toward the moment when every assumption Mercer had made would begin to collapse. 20 minutes earlier, the Westbrook Shopping Center had felt almost forgettable. Cars moved slowly between painted parking lines, automatic doors opened and closed beneath bright storefront signs, and the smell of coffee drifted from a corner cafe whenever someone stepped outside. Darius Cole stood beside a dark blue sedan near the outer edge of the lot, one hand resting loosely near the roof, while Malcolm Price leaned against the passenger's side with a paper cup balanced near his hip. Neither man looked hurried. Neither looked nervous. That was the point. About 100 feet away, a silver sedan sat near the western exit with a clear path to the main road. Darius watched it only through reflections in nearby windows and polished car doors. Malcolm did the same through the sedan's side mirror. "Still there," Malcolm said quietly. Darius nodded. "Let him settle." Malcolm took a sip of coffee and looked toward the storefronts. "You always this patient?" "Only when impatience costs more." A short vibration came from Malcolm's phone. He did not take it out. Instead, he shifted his weight slightly and glanced toward the coffee shop. Inside, a woman in a tan coat sat near the window with a tablet open in front of her. She appeared to be reading. She was not. At the far end of the lot, a dark sport utility vehicle remained parked beneath a row of maple trees with its engine running. Every part of the scene had been designed to look ordinary. Darius checked his watch. 4:28 in the afternoon. "Window should open soon," Malcolm said. "If he follows the pattern." Darius kept his eyes on the reflection of the silver sedan. People are predictable until they know they are being watched. Malcolm gave a faint smile. Comforting. The silver sedan's driver remained inside. No calls. No visitors. No sudden movement. Just waiting. Darius had spent years learning that good surveillance depended less on staring at a target than on understanding the space around it. Who entered twice? Which vehicle circled the block? Which person stopped too long? Which sound did not belong? That was why he noticed the marked patrol car before Malcolm did. It entered from the south driveway and moved through the lot at less than 10 miles per hour. Officer Ryan Mercer was alone behind the wheel. He glanced toward a loading zone, then toward a delivery van, then toward a group of shoppers near a sandwich shop. His eyes moved again and stopped on Darius and Malcolm. The patrol car continued another 50 feet. Malcolm saw it now. Local patrol. I see him. Mercer drove past without stopping. Darius kept his posture relaxed and looked toward the coffee shop instead. The patrol car reached the next aisle. Its brake lights came on. Malcolm lowered his voice. He is turning around. Darius watched the movement in the sedan's window reflection. Do not react. Mercer made a slow loop around the end of the parking row and came back toward them. This time he drove even slower. He looked at Darius, then Malcolm, then the dark blue sedan, then the silver car across the lot. Darius could almost see a story forming behind the windshield. Mercer passed them again and stopped roughly 30 yards away. His engine remained running. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened. Malcolm glanced at Darius. This could complicate things. Darius watched Mercer step onto the pavement. Only if he decides it should. Mercer closed the door and started walking toward them. Darius did not know what assumption the officer had already made, but he knew one thing immediately. Mercer was no longer approaching to satisfy curiosity. He was approaching to confirm a conclusion. Mercer stopped several feet from Darius and Malcolm and let his eyes move over them before he spoke. The pause was long enough to feel deliberate. Afternoon, he said. Darius gave a small nod. Officer. Mercer looked at the dark blue sedan, then at the silver car near the western exit. You two been out here long? Malcolm answered first. A little while. Mercer shifted his attention to him. Doing what? Malcolm kept his voice even. Waiting. For who? Darius stepped in before the questions became more specific than they could safely answer. Is there a problem, officer? Mercer looked back at him. I am asking the questions. His tone was still controlled, but the change was immediate. What had sounded like conversation now felt like assessment. Darius recognized the difference. Understood, he said. Then are we being detained? Mercer studied him for a moment. Why would you ask that? Because I want to know whether we are free to leave. Malcolm said nothing, but his eyes shifted briefly toward the silver sedan. The driver inside had not moved. Mercer noticed the glance. You keep looking over there. Darius followed Mercer's line of sight without turning his head. We are standing in a parking lot. There is a lot to look at. Mercer did not smile. Identification. Darius kept both hands where Mercer could see them. What is the reason for the stop? Suspicious behavior. What behavior? Mercer exhaled slowly. You two are hanging around a parking lot, watching vehicles, and acting like you do not want to answer simple questions. Malcolm looked at him. We have answered every question we can. Mercer's jaw tightened. Every question you can. Darius knew immediately that Malcolm's wording had landed badly. He means we have cooperated. Mercer took one step closer. Then show me identification. Darius glanced toward the coffee shop. The woman in the tan coat was still seated near the window, her tablet resting on the table. At the far end of the lot, the dark sport utility vehicle had not moved. The operation was still intact. For now, officer, Darius said. If this is a voluntary conversation, we would rather continue our afternoon. Mercer stared at him. That sounds like you are trying to avoid me. It sounds like I am asking whether we are legally required to stay. A shopping cart rattled behind Mercer as a man pushed it toward a pickup truck. Two teenagers walked past carrying fountain drinks. Nobody else seemed concerned about Darius and Malcolm until Mercer made them the center of attention. Hands where I can see them, Mercer said. Both men complied immediately. Malcolm's phone vibrated once inside his coat. He did not reach for it. Mercer heard the sound. What was that? My phone. Do not touch it. I was not going to. Mercer looked between the two men again, as if their calm responses were becoming evidence instead of reassurance. You both seem very comfortable with police procedure. Darius answered carefully. We understand the importance of staying calm. Mercer narrowed his eyes. That is an interesting answer. Malcolm kept his hands visible. It is a normal answer. Mercer looked toward the silver sedan again. That car belonged to either of you? No, Darius said. Then why do you keep watching it? Darius held his gaze. You are making an assumption. Mercer's expression hardened. And you are making this harder than it needs to be. Darius felt the space around them tighten. The target was still in position. Their team was still waiting. But Mercer had reached the point where every attempt to clarify the situation seemed to confirm the suspicion he had brought with him. What began as a question was becoming an order, and Darius knew the next few minutes would depend on whether Mercer still cared about finding the truth or only about proving himself right. Mercer kept his eyes fixed on Darius as the ordinary. Sounds of the shopping center continued around them. A cart will squeak somewhere near the grocery entrance. A car door closed 2 rows over. Someone laughed outside the coffee shop, unaware that the mood near the dark blue sedan had changed completely. Take out your identification, Mercer said. Darius did not move. You asked us to keep our hands visible. Mercer looked irritated by the answer. Then tell me where it is. Darius spoke slowly. Inside my coat. Mercer turned toward Malcolm. Yours too. Malcolm nodded once. Yes. Mercer shifted his stance and looked at both men again. One at a time. Darius felt the pressure building, but his voice remained level. Before either of us reaches inside our clothing, I want to be clear. We are complying with your instructions. Then stop narrating everything. Darius let the comment pass. Malcolm glanced toward the silver sedan. The driver had adjusted the rearview mirror. Small movement. Important movement. Darius saw it too. Mercer caught the glance and immediately turned toward the car. There it is again. Malcolm looked back at him. What? You keep watching that vehicle. I am looking around. No, you are tracking it. Darius stepped in with his voice, not his body. Officer, there is no threat here. Mercer looked back at him. You do not decide that. The sentence hung in the air. Darius had heard certainty like that before, the kind that left no room for new information. He kept both hands open and visible. Then let us give you accurate information. Mercer studied him. Go ahead. Darius nodded toward his coat. My identification is in the inside pocket. I am going to reach for it only if you tell me to. For a moment, Mercer said nothing. His eyes moved from Darius's hands to his coat, then to Malcolm. Slowly, Darius began lowering one hand. At the same time, Malcolm shifted his weight slightly to give him space. Mercer reacted immediately. Do not move. Both men froze. Malcolm raised his hands higher. Darius stopped with his hand halfway down. The entire exchange lasted less than a second, but Mercer's posture changed. His hand moved to his holster. Both of you stay exactly where you are. Darius did not argue. We are staying still. Mercer drew his service weapon and kept it lowered in a controlled position while increasing the distance between them. No one shouted. No one rushed. That made the moment feel more dangerous, not less. Several shoppers nearby slowed when they noticed what was happening. Malcolm's eyes moved once toward Darius. Stay calm. Darius understood. The operation still mattered, but the priority had changed. Officer, Darius said, listen carefully. I am a federal agent. My credentials are inside my coat. Mercer stared at him. Federal agent? Yes. Federal what? Federal Bureau of Investigation. Mercer gave a look that made it clear he did not believe a word of it. Darius continued. You can verify everything I am telling you. I am asking permission to reach for my credentials. Malcolm kept his hands raised and his breathing steady. The silver sedan remained near the western exit. The woman inside the coffee shop had stopped looking at her tablet. The dark sport utility vehicle under the maple trees was still in place. Around Mercer, the operation remained invisible only because he had not learned how to see it. One hand, Mercer said at last. Slowly, Darius lowered his right hand inch by inch, reached inside his coat, and removed a black leather credential wallet. He held it away from his body and opened it. The photograph matched. The federal seal was clear. The words Federal Bureau of Investigation were impossible to miss. Mercer looked at the badge, then at Darius, then back at the badge. Darius expected caution to replace certainty. Instead, Mercer gave a short laugh. That is your story? Darius felt the last simple exit from the situation disappear. He had shown Mercer the truth. Now the only question was whether the officer wanted truth badly enough to accept it. Darius held the credential wallet steady for another second. then slowly closed it without taking his eyes off Mercer. "You can verify it," he said. Mercer gave another short laugh, but this time there was less confidence behind it. "Anybody can print something that looks official." Malcolm stayed where he was, both hands visible his. Attention split between Mercer and the silver sedan near the western exit. The driver inside had shifted again. A small movement, a meaningful one. Darius saw Malcolm notice it and understood immediately that their surveillance window was getting tighter. "Call dispatch," Darius said. "Run my name. Contact the Federal Bureau of Investigation Field Office. You have several ways to confirm who I am." Mercer looked at him as if the suggestion itself were an insult. "You do not tell me how to conduct a stop." Darius kept his tone calm. "I am telling you how to verify the information you asked for." The distinction only seemed to irritate Mercer more. He looked toward Malcolm. "And you are supposed to be federal too?" Malcolm answered evenly. "Yes." Mercer shook his head. "Convenient." Malcolm did not respond. He glanced down at his watch instead. For 32 and 26 seconds. Darius caught the time from the corner of his eye. The countdown had begun. Near the coffee shop, the woman in the tan coat stood and placed her tablet into a shoulder bag. At the far end of the lot, the dark sport utility vehicle remained parked beneath the maple trees, but its brake lights came on for half a second. Mercer noticed neither detail. "Put the wallet on the hood," he ordered. Darius complied slowly, setting the credentials on the dark blue sedan where Mercer could see them clearly. "There," Darius said. "Now verify them." Mercer looked down at the wallet, but did not move toward his radio. "You really think this changes anything?" Darius answered. "It should change what you know." Mercer frowned. "What I know is that two men have been watching a vehicle, refusing to explain themselves, and now one of them wants me to believe he works for the Federal Bureau of Investigation." Malcolm spoke quietly. "Then check." Mercer turned toward him. "I was not talking to you. You asked whether you should believe it. Verification answers that." Mercer took a slow breath and looked between them. Darius could see the problem clearly now. This was no longer about uncertainty. Mercer had attached himself to his first conclusion so tightly that accepting new information felt like surrender. Darius had seen that pattern before. People sometimes defended an assumption long after the evidence had changed because admitting they were wrong felt more threatening than being wrong itself. The silver sedan's brake lights flickered. Malcolm saw it. Darius saw it. The woman near the coffee shop adjusted the strap of her bag and stepped toward the door. Malcolm's phone vibrated once inside his coat. He did not move. Mercer heard it. "Do not touch that phone." "I am not touching anything," Malcolm said. Darius checked his own watch without lowering his hands. For 32 and 38 seconds. "Why are you both watching the time?" Mercer asked. Darius looked at him. "Because time matters." Mercer narrowed his eyes. "For what?" Darius said nothing. The answer belonged to an operation Mercer still did not understand. Across the lot, the silver sedan shifted into drive. The dark sport utility vehicle under the maple trees remained still for one more moment, then its lights came on. Malcolm glanced once toward Darius. Darius gave the smallest nod. "Hold position. Do not break cover yet." Mercer saw the glance and misread it immediately. "Stop communicating with each other." Darius turned his attention back to him. "We are standing still. We have answered your questions. I showed you valid federal identification. You have chosen not to verify it." Mercer stared at him. "Chosen?" "Yes." The word landed harder than Darius intended, not because he raised his voice, but because it named the truth of the moment. Mercer had been given an exit. He had been given evidence. He had been given a simple way to confirm it. He had rejected all three. The silver sedan began rolling toward the western exit. Malcolm looked at his watch again. For 32 and 46 seconds. Around them, the operation started to move, quietly and almost invisibly. Mercer believed he was still controlling two suspicious men beside a parked car. What he could not see was that the next minute had already started arranging the consequences of every decision he had made. The silver sedan rolled toward the western exit, moving slowly enough to look ordinary to anyone who did not know what to watch for. Darius knew better. Malcolm knew better. Neither man moved. Mercer remained focused on them, still treating the federal credentials on the hood of the dark blue sedan as if they were part of a lie he had already decided to believe. "Stay where you are," he said. Darius kept both hands visible. "We are staying exactly where we are." Malcolm glanced toward the moving sedan, then toward the coffee shop. The woman in the tan coat stepped outside with her bag over one shoulder and paused near the curb. She did not look at them. Instead, she adjusted the strap once, then twice. Darius recognized the signal. The target was mobile. Team 1 was taking over. Mercer noticed only that Malcolm had shifted his eyes again. "What are you looking at now?" Malcolm answered calmly. "The parking lot." Mercer gave him a hard stare. "You keep watching everything except me." Darius spoke before Malcolm could answer. "Because there are other things happening here." Mercer looked toward him. "Such as?" Darius did not respond. The dark sport utility vehicle beneath the maple trees pulled away from its parking space and began moving toward the same exit as the silver sedan. A second unmarked vehicle appeared near the south driveway. Mercer noticed that one. His expression changed slightly. "Who are those people?" Malcolm checked his watch. For 32 and 58 seconds. Darius saw the time. 12 seconds had passed since the silver sedan started moving. The operation was progressing exactly as planned. Mercer looked from the approaching vehicle to Darius. "Are they with you?" Darius answered with the same calm tone. "You already have the information you need to answer that question." Mercer glanced at the credential wallet on the hood. For the first time, uncertainty replaced part of his confidence. "I told you I am not accepting that at face value." "Then verify it," Darius said. "You have been given that option repeatedly." The woman in the tan coat crossed the lot without coming near them. Malcolm's phone vibrated twice inside his coat. He did not touch it. Darius knew the code. Target transferred. Surveillance intact. Mercer heard the vibration and stiffened. "Do not reach for that phone." Malcolm kept his hands exactly where they were. "I am not moving." The dark sport utility vehicle disappeared through the western exit behind the silver sedan. The second unmarked vehicle stopped about 40 feet away. Its driver's door opened. Supervisory Special Agent Laura Bennett stepped out wearing a dark blazer over plain clothes. She closed the door and started walking toward them with the quiet confidence of someone who already understood the entire situation. Mercer watched her approach. "Who was that?" Darius checked his watch. For 33 and 14 seconds. "My supervisor." Mercer gave a skeptical look, but it lacked the force it had carried a minute earlier. Laura continued toward them without rushing. Malcolm finally lowered his eyes from Mercer to Darius for half a second. Darius gave the smallest nod. The covert part of the operation was over. Their target was moving under surveillance, and there was no longer any reason to protect their identities. Mercer looked at the badge on the hood again, then at Laura, then at the unmarked vehicle behind her. The separate details were beginning to connect whether he wanted them to or not. Darius watched the change happen in real time. Certainty became doubt. Doubt became calculation. Mercer had spent the last several minutes insisting that the two black men in front of him were the ones hiding something. Now the parking lot itself was starting to show him that the only person missing the truth had been him. Laura Bennett stopped beside the dark blue sedan and looked first at Darius, then Malcolm, then the credential wallet resting on the hood. Her expression remained composed, but her eyes took in every detail. Mercer shifted his stance as if preparing to explain before anyone had asked him to. "Special Agent Bennett," Darius said. Laura gave a small nod. "Status?" Malcolm answered. "Target transferred. Team 1 has control." Laura glanced toward the western exit where the silver sedan and the dark sport utility vehicle had already disappeared. "Good." Then she turned to Mercer. "And this?" Darius kept his voice even. "Officer Mercer stopped us during surveillance. I identified myself, presented federal credentials, and asked him to verify them." Mercer responded immediately. "I had legitimate concerns. They were watching a vehicle, they refused to explain what they were doing, and I had no reason to trust a badge I had not confirmed." Laura looked at him. "Did you attempt to confirm it?" Mercer hesitated. "Not yet." Malcolm checked his watch. For 33 and 23 seconds. Laura did not react to the time. She looked at the credential wallet and then back at Mercer. "Did you contact dispatch?" "No." "Did you request a supervisor?" "No." "Did you run his name?" Mercer's jaw tightened. The situation was moving quickly. Darius said nothing. He did not need to. The answers were doing more than any accusation could. Laura reached toward the credential wallet only after Darius nodded, opened it briefly, and verified the identification. "These credentials are valid." Mercer looked toward the storefronts, then back at her. "Fine. Then this was a misunderstanding. Darius picked up the wallet and slipped it back inside his coat. A misunderstanding changes when the facts change. Mercer looked at him. I was trying to do my job. Darius held his gaze. And I gave you information that could have helped you do it. Laura's phone vibrated once. She checked the screen. Target secured. Operation intact. Malcolm let out a quiet breath and lowered his hands slightly, still moving carefully. Mercer noticed the shift and seemed to realize that the federal operation had continued around him despite everything that had happened. Laura looked at his body camera. Is your camera recording? Mercer glanced down. It should be. Do not touch it. Mercer frowned. Why? Because there has been a detention involving federal agents during an active operation. The recording needs to be preserved. Mercer looked irritated again. You are making this sound like I did something criminal. Laura answered calmly. I said the record needs to be preserved. Those are not the same thing. Darius appreciated the distinction. This was not about turning Mercer into a villain simply because he had challenged federal agents. It was about making sure every decision could be reviewed without being rewritten later. Malcolm glanced at his watch again. For 33 and 40 seconds. Less than 90 seconds had passed since Mercer laughed at the badge. Then his radio crackled. A dispatcher asked for his status and referenced an earlier traffic assignment on Jefferson Avenue. Mercer reached toward the radio. Unit 12, I am tied up at Westbrook Shopping Center. The dispatcher paused. Copy. Sergeant Turner is requesting your location. Were you cleared from the Jefferson Avenue assignment? Mercer did not answer immediately. Laura heard the question. So did Darius and Malcolm. Darius watched Mercer's face and saw the same certainty that had defined the stop begin to weaken under something he could not dismiss so easily. Documentation. Radio traffic. Timestamps. A supervisor on the way. Mercer had spent the afternoon treating his own judgment as the most reliable fact in the parking lot. Now facts were arriving from every direction, and none of them were asking for his permission. Mercer finally answered the radio. Unit 12, Westbrook Shopping Center. I diverted after observing suspicious activity. The dispatcher replied almost immediately. Copy. Sergeant Turner is 3 minutes out. Confirm your body camera is active. Mercer glanced down at the device on his uniform. Affirmative. Laura Bennett did not react, but Darius noticed the hesitation before the answer. Malcolm checked his watch. For 33 and 48 seconds. Darius remembered the moment Mercer had laughed at the federal credentials. For 32 and 26. The clock was still moving. Officer Mercer, Laura said, do not adjust your camera or any equipment until your supervisor arrives. Mercer looked at her. I already told you it is recording. Then preserving it should be simple. A marked patrol vehicle turned into the parking lot less than a minute later. Sergeant Michael Turner stepped out, closed the door, and walked toward them with a focused expression. Mercer began speaking before Turner reached the sedan. Sergeant, I stopped these two men because they were watching a vehicle and refusing to identify themselves properly. One produced credentials I could not verify. Turner looked at Darius. Darius slowly removed the credential wallet again and opened it. Turner studied it, then looked at Laura when she presented hers. Federal operation? He asked. Laura nodded. Active surveillance. Agent Cole identified himself during the stop and repeatedly asked Officer Mercer to verify his credentials. Turner turned toward Mercer. Did you call dispatch to verify him? Mercer paused. Not yet. Why not? The situation was developing. Malcolm checked the time. For 34 and 8 seconds. Turner looked toward Mercer's body camera. Dispatch asked whether that camera was active. Is it? Mercer nodded. Yes. Turner keyed his radio. Dispatch, can you confirm live status on Unit 12 camera? A brief silence followed. Then the dispatcher answered. Sergeant, system shows the camera was manually deactivated approximately 1 minute ago and reactivated 23 seconds later. Mercer's face changed. Laura remained still. Turner looked directly at him. Did you turn it off? I may have hit the control accidentally. During this stop? Mercer hesitated. Possibly. Turner's expression hardened. Do not touch it again. Darius said nothing. The record was beginning to speak for itself. Malcolm looked at his watch. For 34 and 18 seconds. Turner asked dispatch to preserve the device log, radio traffic, and available footage. The dispatcher then added that Mercer had entered a note describing Darius and Malcolm as possible law enforcement impersonators before attempting any credential verification. Turner looked at Mercer again. You classified them as impersonators before checking the identification? Mercer answered quickly. I believe the badge was fake. Based on what? No answer came. Turner took a slow breath. Ryan, I am relieving you of duty effective immediately. Keep your hands visible. Mercer stared at him. You cannot be serious. Turner's voice stayed measured. I am. And because there is now a documented question involving intentional interruption of official recording during a detention and possible falsification of the incident record, you are being detained while this is formally investigated. You will have full due process. Mercer looked toward Darius, perhaps expecting satisfaction. Darius showed none. This was not revenge. It was procedure catching up with choices. Turner secured Mercer's service weapon according to department policy, then placed him in handcuffs without spectacle. Malcolm looked at his watch one final time. For 34 and 26 seconds. Exactly 2 minutes had passed since Mercer laughed at Darius's federal badge. The parking lot remained almost completely ordinary around them. Shoppers walked past. Cars moved through the lanes. Coffee cooled inside paper cups. But the balance of the moment had changed completely. Mercer had believed authority meant his judgment did not need to be questioned. 2 minutes later, he was learning that authority without accountability was only another decision waiting to be reviewed. 3 weeks later, Darius Cole returned to Westbrook Shopping Center just after 4 in the afternoon. The parking lot looked exactly as it had before. Cars moved slowly between the painted lines, shoppers crossed toward the grocery entrance, and the coffee shop windows reflected the maple trees at the edge of the property. Nothing about the place suggested that a federal surveillance operation had once unfolded there, or that one officer's decisions had triggered a formal investigation. Malcolm Price arrived a few minutes later carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Darius and leaned against the dark blue sedan. You heard from Laura? He asked. Darius nodded. This morning, the review had moved forward. The department had preserved the body camera footage, system logs, dispatch traffic, and Mercer's written entries from the stop. Investigators had also examined the interruption in the recording and the note describing Darius and Malcolm as possible impersonators before any verification had taken place. Sergeant Michael Turner had submitted his own report, and Mercer remained off patrol while the department determined whether policy violations or criminal misconduct had occurred. Malcolm took a sip of coffee and looked across the lot. I bet he thinks the worst mistake was laughing at the badge. Darius watched a father guide his young daughter across the crosswalk near the grocery store. It was not. Malcolm turned toward him. No. Darius shook his head. The mistake happened before I ever showed him the badge. Malcolm understood. Mercer had made his first judgment long before he saw a federal seal or heard the words Federal Bureau of Investigation. He had seen 2 black men standing beside a car, noticed where they were looking, and built a story around them before he knew anything else. Everything that followed had been shaped by that first assumption. People keep talking about the credentials, Darius said. Like that is what made the stop wrong. Malcolm looked toward the western exit where the silver sedan had disappeared weeks earlier. It made the truth impossible to ignore. Exactly. Darius lowered his coffee. But the truth should have mattered before the badge came out. A breeze pushed a loose receipt across the pavement. A delivery driver passed nearby without looking twice at them. 2 men stood beside a sedan, drinking coffee, and nobody asked them to explain why they were there. It was so ordinary that it almost felt important. Malcolm looked at Darius. You think Mercer understands that now? Darius considered the question. That depends on what lesson he thinks he learned. What do you mean? Darius looked across the lot. If he thinks the lesson is to be more careful because the next black man might work for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, then he learned nothing. Malcolm nodded slowly. Darius continued. The badge proved where I worked. It did not make me more deserving of fairness. It did not make my questions more legitimate. It did not make my dignity more valuable. Malcolm lifted his cup slightly. That sounds like the real report. Darius gave a faint smile. Some things do not fit into reports. They stood there in silence for a moment, watching people move through the same public space that had once become the center of suspicion, authority, and consequences. There was no victory celebration, no revenge, no satisfaction in seeing another person fall. only the quieter recognition that accountability mattered because power mattered. Mercer had believed authority gave him the right to decide what was true before the evidence arrived. Darius had learned the opposite. Real authority begins when certainty makes room for facts, and real justice begins before anyone has to prove they are powerful enough to deserve it.